Sorry, good morning. This is George Lees talking to John Paterson. I want to try and keep this video under 10 minutes because that's how I brought Lord Patton down. If I talk for too long, the public do not have the patience to listen to the whole story.
Excellent. Okay.
I've just made a video that's one of the most important on the globalism fraud project that I've ever made. I made it myself yesterday, and I want to tell you the university links in that story. And I've now captured a few names that will make it obvious to you that we've talked about the universities in warmongering roles, the links to the skulls, the secret societies, and the mobilisation of vast funds. Now the big universities that are involved in that are Oxford, Cambridge, Göttingen and Heidelberg, so we know all of that already. There's a picture of one of my colleagues at Otago. He's on the list of one of the 1,000 most famous Freemasons on our globe. His name is Griffin, which is a joke about the City of London and the griffins on the church roof and the lawless City of London that is immune from the UK Constitution since the Magna Carta was signed. Frank Griffin was the boss at the biochemistry department where the Lamont professor works, and all of it is run for profit. He's Irish. He told me before I left, when he refused to show up at the golf course where I was going to play golf with him and his mate, the Freemasons and the links to golf, horse racing and all of the things we've told you about, the cricket frauds and all of the sporting frauds, all of them linking to the tier after tier of deceit. And what Frank Griffin told me, because he's Irish, was that they had solved the Irish problems by making the socio-economic issues that make the wealth divide project so important. They had taken that away in Ireland. That story was told me in 2008 when they crashed the fucking global banks with the methods that we talk about in every video. And Frank is having a laugh because what he studies is pathologies in the deer community, an icon in the Piso menagerie, and what he does is try to prevent the spreading of a virus there. He has made £66 million. Do you get the significance of that for a Freemason, John? In saving the deer herds in New Zealand, but the deer herds in New Zealand are still horribly afflicted with Johne's disease. He started his campaign working in sub-Saharan Africa on the land grabs, and when they crashed the banks with Martin Sorrell in 2009, after I had come home and the Irish were cast into crisis again, you then get a few sectarian events because of the links of Gordon Bowden's videos with mine to the Cahills, to the advisors of Paddy Ashdown and to all of the people like Jerry Adams that were bought into the stealing of everything that could be Ireland's for free. That's the role of the Freemasons at Otago University, is to steal from Otago University and put everything back into the hands of the Crown Templar, which is why when they get exhausted as a profiteering professor, they get put on the Royal Society. It's the moniker round your neck that is the knighthood, and Sir David Skegg has dropped out of my mailing list. He was the boss after the South African boss with links to Dr. Jones that is a friend of Omar Sharif and plays bridge with him in Auckland where the Rothschilds Trust is registered. I'm not sparing any of their names now. They are stealing from the world's children and all of their IDs are coming out. Let me just click backwards. So there's Frank Griffin, head of biochemistry for all of the time I was at Otago University, the Irish link, and the links to the Cahills, the SAS and the killing of people that Gordon Bowden and I have reported. It takes you also, in the previous video I made, I talked about Wim Duisberg, the former head of the European Central Bank, found face down in his swimming pool, totally immune from law enforcement anywhere across the globes, because these bastards totally understand the imperative of silencing the innocents. That's Dim Wim Duisberg, killed in his swimming pool, head of the European Central Bank. Not many people talk about that now. Okay, and let me just take it back. There's David Skegg. He's an expert on British American tobacco issues, and you understand the magnitude of the British American tobacco fraud.
Yeah.
I explained the pipe joke to the world yesterday in a very poor quality video, and it was linked to the translation of the meaning of the word monkey. You and I have talked about the PG Tips monkey and the monkey on your shoulder that has been a joke for the world elites since world history was written, and that started in Canaan. Yeah, and that is the birth of all of the massive religious frauds. Yeah, so David Skegg dropped out. There's a picture of the Queenstown earthquake search terms that I put in. The biggest earthquake I ever experienced in my working life was when I met a Nobel Prize winner in a place called Queenstown in New Zealand that Queen Victoria never ever visited. And can you guess what the epicentre of the quake was, John? Right in the heart of Christchurch, which in New Zealand is called the English City. John Key was raised there. He's a hedge fund manager like every other world leader from the defrauded banking empires. Queenstown is on the Alpine side of that country, and in the video I made yesterday I explained the Alpine jokes and the Alp jokes and the links to the Conservatives and the McAlpines. Yeah, the Queenstown earthquake. What was the epicentre of that? You said that you recognised what it would have been.
What it would have been?
Yeah. What was the biggest impact made in the heart of Christchurch in all of the images I'm looking at when I search for...
Was that where the meeting was going ahead?
No, it's a Christian church right in the heart of the square. Yeah, and it was used to sell fudge. Part of the geopolitical joke. It's a fudge. Do you know who visited the city the day that event occurred?
Go on.
The Trans-Pacific Trade Delegation.
Yeah.
You know what their mission is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Asset strip the whole of the sovereignty of those countries. New Zealand has lost it all ages ago. Nancy McKinstry is in that trade delegation. When they visited Japan, can you guess what happened next?
Oh, tell me about it.
The tsunami.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get the picture? How many American troops were in Japan on that day?
Loads.
50,000.
Yeah.
Right, that's all irrelevant. It's the deceit and the stealing from the children that I'm trying to confront, and that's why I'm naming all the names. The Dean at Otago was from Bristol. You know all about the Bristol boiler rooms. Her name was Helen Nicholson. She's a traitor to me and all of my family. We used to go to dinner with them. Several of the academics now work in Japan because there is no funding left for academic activity in New Zealand. The head of the physiology department came from Bristol. Yeah, and when the Irish banks were crashed again by Martin Sorrell and the cabal, and the Iceland banks, all of these academics pretend that they do not understand that. Right at the top of the food chain, they're allowed to be the heads of the chancellor for the university was the head of one of the Olympic delegations, and everything is a profiteering fraud for them, and it only gets to the people right at the top of the organisation. I was a head of department, I sat on the Senate at the university, but now that I understand the links to Great Britain and the Crown Templar, I totally understand the fraud. So it's important that you listen to the video I just made on, I forget what the title was, but I'll tell you that right at the end. Otago Polytechnic is tied into it. The boss at HR at Otago Polytechnic, where my wife worked for the head of the university, you know, within weeks of her being referred to by Dr. Jones, my boss, who we've talked about in the interlocking directors with Miss Scott, and the what's the place in North London that you visited recently, Lord Hullock's place?
Oh, Notting Hill.
The Notting Hill joke. That is in popular culture, with all the beneficiaries of the Leveson inquiry in the cast, because the whole of world history and the treasonous behaviours of this global commercial cabal are laughed at in every Hollywood movie. That's why all the Hollywood movies get the Oscars. The Oscars are part of the Clutha myths. Do you understand that? There's a massive Clutha river in New Zealand, and I've visited it many times. The wooden huts in the village are decrepit, but that is the joke about the crashing of the Clutha helicopter. It's a set of legends that were written about the Scottish gods and the Scottish myths, and all of the things that we take the piss out of are now the burden that the children at universities all around the globe have to shoulder, because the Vice-Chancellor is a profiteer. David Skegg was much more decent than any of the Vice-Chancellors I know in England. All of them are massively at the trough, and they have enhanced the theft project against their own students massively in the last 10 years. In 1995, education was free in British universities. Now they are £50,000 in debt, every one of them, when they get the 4-year honours degree that the woman at Bath University got for nothing. She's Glynis Breakwell, the boss at Bath University. And the links to the Bath University, the Bristol frauds, the money laundering out the Bristol laundering vents are massive, and all of it is coming out in my videos now. I'm not sparing any of the names of the people that work with. Helen Nicholson's husband was a Burns Club reader. You know, he used to celebrate that wee cowerin timorous beastie thing. Both of their parents are now dead in Musselburgh. I asked her to visit my home. They do not dare visit my home. Only the students are cast into that problem, and even the students get heart attacks before I leave Otago, like Dr. Jones, my boss, who's the friend of the man that he plays bridge with, Omar Sharif, in Auckland, linked entirely into the Auckland Trust that we talked about, run by the Rothschilds the other day. Everything is a cabal that steals from the youth of the world. Okay, what are the other pictures? So Otago Polytechnic was run by a Kerr. Within weeks of Dr. Jones at Otago University referring my wife to them as an innocent, decent person. You should listen to the video I've just made on my wife's career path. It takes you into Ashridge College, the charity that is one of the top 25 economic universities on our globe, run by people that run similar universities in America that gave me the sack on the River Tweed. That's the Harrises again. Peter Harris is the name of the man that got rid of me and sold me into slavery with Lord Sanderson of Bowden, the criminal on the EU fish quotas for 30 years. Yeah, all of the names are coming out. The people that sacked me and allowed someone from Tayside to come and replace me are the ordinary working men, McElrath. During that period, one of their brothers died, and just this year, one of the children of one of their nephews died in an epilepsy incident. I'm not covering anything up on their behalf now. They are slaves to the Rothschild, and the whole world, since I made that last video, now know that my wife is also enslaved by that system, which is why I am being persecuted. And every time I make a graphic video on my persecution, so Otago Polytechnic now sells virtual oil and gas scams out of Queenstown. The boss at HR is called Matthew Carter, and I'm not sure whether his first name is Matthew or Mark, but you can look, or you used to be able to look for his LinkedIn profile. He quite openly declares that he used to work for one of the big four world auditors, with links to BHP Billington and that links him directly to the Queen and the little messages that have been sent by Gordon Bowden telling me that I'm a bit slow on the uptake, but Her Majesty owns the whole of BHP Billington, along with the big four auditors that the head of HR at Otago Polytechnic used to work for. It's openly declared. The head of the Borders Council double her salary when the rest of the public sector get their pay frozen. She used to work for BAE Systems Limited. Yeah, and all of the videos we're making now exposes the links to the Churchills, the Beaverbrooks, the Bonner Laws that run Ashridge College, which is now in the top 25 economic universities on the globe, but it's a registered fucking charity for a laugh, right in the heart of the Rothschilds' empire. My wife trained there, my wife trained in Woburn, Dukes of Bedford, all of them die young, because God has a big sense of humour, which is really, really prevalent now. It's really, really important that the world that is being stolen from gets God-fearing and that they go back to decency. Let me see what the other images are that I've saved. There's Otago University. It was 4th of 7 in New Zealand because it's so fucking arrogant that it did not take the research audit seriously. When I moved in there, they were 4th out of 7. When I left, they were the best. My department was the best in the medical school in 3 centres. That's the English City, Christchurch, and Wellington. Do you get the impression that Wellington could be a legacy of the Brits? Have you heard of Wellington before, John?
Yeah, I've been there, George.
Yeah, everything is a fraud at the Commonwealth's expense.
Yep.
And the concept that we have a Commonwealth Games to celebrate the Commonwealth being shared with the poor people now, it's almost entirely elite sports, and they get a bigger crowd at the execution of the returning troops than they do at those events. And the police come from G4S, and the real police that have to go to London to protect the UN thieves and the United Nations people when they come to summits in London, they have to work 13-hour shifts, but they know now, thanks to you and me, that their jobs are being asset stripped and taken over by G4S. So that's Otago University, with the links to the leading Freemasons, Bristol, Liverpool, and everywhere that Gordon Bowden and I disclose as the fraudulent centres and the epicentres for slavery and the training of Hitler and Stalin in the lead up to their biggest ever profiteering effort.
Tavistock.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know all about that, and all of the links to London and the locations in St James's Square, and you know all about the Santiago frauds and the links to religion. That's why the epicentre of the quake was the church that sells the fudge. God likes to have a laugh at the brutalisation and stealing from all of the innocent citizens, and when he catches it, the Val de Villa earthquake, my wife's name is Val, that was superseded by the quake they had in 2014, which we talked about in that religious video. Can you remember that? That was on the 1st of April. Avriel, it links you into the 6 Jewish gods and the angels that I talked about the other day. And I understand the deaths and the cancers of all of the singers that sang the jokes about being picked to play the game in freeing the world and laugh at the brutalization of the American Indians at the same time. Their name is Crow, like the Indian tribe. Tonto, laughed at openly, in Spanish means fool. Everything is a joke as they steal and kill from the people. So that's the Otago University picture. What else have I got? I just want to make this brief and refer you to the previous video that I've just posted. Okay?
Would you said that the last video...
So there's a picture now of Steve Cram. Have you heard of him?
Yes.
Chancellor now.
Yeah.
Chancellor in the sporting frauds at the University of Sunderland. Yeah? Do you know who the director of the Chariots of Fire film was?
Yes. Go on, it's gone off my head.
So there's a picture of him. That is Lord Putnam, Chancellor at Sunderland University. And do you know the name of the boss at Sunderland University who eventually made me a professor? And he's pictured there with all of the people that are involved in all of the sporting and Commonwealth and Olympic frauds.
Yeah.
You know how Newcastle is a hub for sporting excellence, and we've had all those 10,000 metres runners up there. All of them are at the take. And there's a guy, who's the guy? Lord Winston. I've listened to him lecturing in New Zealand. He gives lectures at the book festival at Hay on Wye. You now understand the meaning of the word hay?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the markets in Paris and in the Chipping Norton region, it's a Hales derivative. It's a joke, and he used to wear underpants with the British Union flag on it. Yeah, and he goes on global lecture tours talking up the massive globalised fraud. And so the Chancellor that makes the Chariots of Fire joke about singing, about not running for your country on a Sunday as an amateur, as an obligation to the fraudulent church that you and I are the only people that are now prepared to talk about, yeah, he is the boss at the same university as Professor Peter Fiddler. Yeah, he's a fat bloke that for almost the whole of his time at Sunderland was unfit for work. And do you get the links of the Fiddler joke to what is happening in the global cabal? Yeah, you've got to pick a pocket or two. All of it is led by the Zionist leaders, but they link in directly to the papacy, all of the corrupted archbishops, and the links to the corrupted media that you think you have cured this week, but they're just revealing the visit of Gordon. They do not reveal any of the crimes.
Yeah, but that's the good thing about it, George. The fact that they're too scared to reveal it, it tells us everything, doesn't it?
Well, there's nothing in those news releases that reveals anything that is a crime. You're just telling us that the BBC have some good people who are undisclosed and they're going to fix it over time, like Russia Today, that are running the laundering scams in league with the CIA, that invite the American presidents to be the American presidents, and the American presidents are all directly related by artificial insemination to the fraudulent monarchy that misnamed Queenstown in New Zealand. And the biggest earthquake that occurred there was when I met a Nobel Prize winner, because everybody that's a hero in the system is a financial criminal. And that takes me into the Pearsons and all of the people that I've mentioned in the videos. Everybody that I've worked with in my life have been traitors to my cause, and I'm the only innocent man that I can find on the globe, with the exception of 10 or so people that include Dean Henderson. Have you heard of him?
No, I haven't.
He's the one that lived in the town of Missoula, Montana, right next door to the airbase that is an official secret for NATO 70 years after World War II ended. Yeah, he's a contact of mine. He's an expert on the global and banking and oil frauds and the big families that run that, almost all of whom are still on the Rothschild interlocks and are covered up by minor diversions by people that call themselves investigative journalists, that talk openly on the stool at RT, like Snowden the whistleblower and the Pussy Riot band. It is a joke at the people's expense, and I'm going to stop now. Let me just see what the other pictures are. So there's the University of Sunderland. I've applied twice for jobs to them. The universities in the northeast are now selling off all of the gear that I brought back from New Zealand as a prize winning head of department, because my research is not cutting edge enough. All of the Russell Group leaders are criminals, and most of them have been forced into resignation in the last few weeks. At the University of Durham, where I still have a voluntary honorary chair, Chris Higgins has resigned. He's heard me apply for the chair in the pharmacy school. He gave the job to a senior lecturer from the University of Sunderland that used to be one of my subordinates. When I joined Sunderland University, the research score out of 5 was 1. When I left it, the research score was 3 out of 5. The funding dropped under Tony Blair's generous regime to 1/6 of the previous level, which is why I'm now a fraud investigator, and I'm prepared to reveal the heads of department at Otago universities as criminal thieves from the innocent little countries that could be the prosperous Commonwealth. Instead, they're cast into slavery by the secret societies. Okay, I've got nothing more to reveal. Please, let me just tell you the title of the last video I made.
Yeah, I'm going to put that in the link underneath.
So it's Butlins, Bonar Law, Eger, MI5, Otago Poly, Ashridge College, the Rothschilds, the Kerrs, and I cannot see the rest of it because it's too long. And the links to those big 4 auditors and the people that told me to fuck off in the economics department at Otago University when I was telling them about Prime Minister Gordon Brown's crimes describe entirely the illicit affiliation that we have in this tale of 2 cities. That's Dunedin and Edinburgh, that runs all its frauds under the black rock. Yeah, and all of its toxic debt is a joke, because at the bottom of that black rock, where the Scotsman office used to be, where my picture is taken in the flat cap, yeah, they have now removed the Scotsman and all of the publishing empires from the city centre. They will not let you know where they are in case I start visiting them with the placard round the neck that got me locked out of Miss Sturgeon's treasonous Holyrood Parliament. Right across the road, the Royal Tourist affiliation at the Holyrood Palace was open for business, and if you buy a ticket there, because most of the visitors come from Japan, that was brutalised by the last 2 names in that listing, which are MI6 and the Rothschilds. Yeah, the Rothschilds run the Auckland syndicate. The Rothschilds run everything across our globe, and the people in New Zealand are either too dim-witted to understand that. My students used to tell me that the central bank at the Beehive, affiliated to the Beehive with the black and yellow bee colours that you know all about, and the Melrose frauds, yeah, and the solicitor and law enforcement frauds that link you into Harold Wilson and the people that were his predecessors in the bombing of Aden to keep the BP plant there. They've now gone big on all of those projects. And so this is a revelation about the links to Stella Rimington, Miss Manningham Buller, and all of the intel people that worked for Otago Polytechnic when they got commercialised during my period of my wife's visit to them. She trained at Ashridge, she trained in the Woburn region, she trained in Baker Street, she trained in Marks and Spencer's. Are you beginning to see the importance that you study the last video that I made on Stella Rimington, Manningham Buller, the Wargraves industry near Chipping Norton, Royal Wootton Bassett, and everything that they do kills the innocents, and then it becomes the Poppy Fund? Can you look at that video quickly, John, and we will analyse it together?
I want to publish this as soon as possible, George, and I'm going to attach that video to this link.
Jolly good. Okay? Thanks for your time, and thanks for listening, and thanks for your understanding approach. All that needs to happen is that they back out gently, which is why I keep playing the pictures of Hannah Rothschild saying that Mandelson and Tony Blair's spin doctors were the most influential politicians of their day. They are war criminals, and she knows it. And all I want from them is an apology for the crimes against the people. I do not want to execute them. You want to bring back the death sentence. I think that we would be much better off with no guillotines, no guns, no bombs, no missiles, and the people that then become the head of the local council or the lay preacher in the Church of Scotland would then live a long and healthy life, and they would not be unfit for work like Peter Fiddler was, with his salary of £400,000 a year. He was the highest paid chancellor because he was in charge of me when I was in Britain. Yeah, and Otago University was 4th of 7 when I went to New Zealand. Now the decent academics get no funding at all because Miss Manningham Buller is now the head of the imperialist university in the UK. That's Imperial University, where I used to be a lecturer. The people that have replaced, that have been her predecessors, are Sir Richard Sykes, the profiteer in pharma, Lord Kerr of Kinlochart, that no one's allowed to know about his genealogy, lives in Granton-on-Spey, like the Rangers thief Craig White. Yeah, £5 million mansion, homes in Monaco. Yeah, and the next boss was I forget who that was, but there are 4 or 5 of them at Imperial alone that are totally now involved in surveillance. And when you look at the video that I made yesterday, you'll see how heavily they are trying to shut down my IT, because I'm a threat to the tyrannised world.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm releasing all of the names with everybody that I've worked with.
Excellent stuff.
Okay, cheers John, I'll talk to you this evening when you've had a look at it.
Yeah, will do. Thank you, George.
Cheers.
Cheers.